On November 2020, Kai's music video released with a short film that consists of 6 parts. 6 sections which form the beginning, middle and end with a special pattern of plot. These names actually refer to the concept behind the music video and film. In his music video, Kai breaks down the so-called Aristotelian structure of an artwork, and presents a completely avant-garde format, and true to that, the music is equally fitting. That is why the world of music today should appreciate such artists, from the director to the scenic designer, the arranger and of course, the artist himself, who is the focal point of this story. This mini-album brings a new light to the questions such as, who am I, where am I, what is this world? There are repetitive questions of an identity crisis that directors have created in the past, because of their interest and different opinions and beliefs about the said subject. But there are few people today who put aside these questions and want to create a work of art, without any identification of personality, about a stranger who has discarded his own identity and beliefs, and simply doesn't care about the creation of the world. His only concern is to crush predetermined events. To be more specific, precisely the Aristotelian structure is the world, which is divided into 3 main elements: beginning, middle, and the end, and includes divisions such as identity, theme, time, and event. In general, we are all born in a specific time and place. Each of us is given an identity, we are in a certain plot and theme, and depending on our decision that we are all predetermined to take, our lives are formed. Interestingly, this structure of Aristotle was written about tragic plays. Of course, there are works that do not follow this structure, but if we want to consider this structure as a kind of subtext, this is where the subject becomes interesting. So, stay with me until the end to see why this mini-album of Kai is one of the modern masterpieces of music industry. Before each teaser is shown separately, in a fast cut in 20 seconds, we see short moments from each section, while a mysterious music and war sirens are being played in the background. A siren that warns of an accident in the time ahead. If you pay attention, the danger is more noticeable in the second scene. It seems that only Kai from this scene hears the siren and is aware of what is happening around him. I must admit, these short pictures were one of the most controversial scenes I have ever seen in the world of film and cinema. In just 20 seconds, without the slightest dialogue, with only body language alone, we see 5 completely different Kai, at the beginning of the war, the end of the war and its aftermath. When Kai closes his eyes in the tub, all the images are displayed. So there are 2 possibilities. 1. These pictures are a revive of memories that might have happened in the past. 2. These pictures have not happened yet, but Kai is aware of them. The first sequence begins with an inverted world from the room view. While in this inversion the essence of the mezzanine and the objects, along with Kai, fade away completely. Among these elements, the only thing that still retains its meaning is a mirror that does not reflect something important and is in the center of attention. Kai is hovering between heaven and earth, and therefore, it's an allegory of to be, or not to be in terms of mezzanine position. So basically the image we are seeing is an allusion to the inversion of a world inside the mirror. What we will see from now on is a surreal world inside a mirror, given the importance of the first scene and the nature of the mirror. The stranger is a part of the ego, that is confused in the process of determining its identity. The opening scenes give us a sense of the end, which Kai's good acting skills are not ineffective in this regard. The last night, the last supper and the last thought right before everything is over. The location of this teaser has an interesting harmony with it. The Gothic architecture of this building is such that it absorbs the lightest during the day, and illuminates the room in the dark moonlight. Yet despite the lights, candles, and reflections of light, the room's grotesque darkness will never be illuminated by light, because of the suffocating atmosphere that smells of death throughout. The first high-angle image shows three important elements: hourglass, skull-shaped candle holder and ashes on top of beam balance. In the past we saw Kai in the VCR of exploration concerts with a skull in his hand. This image immediately reminds us of Hamlet. Kai has so far referred to two parts of the play, one being Hamlet's monologue about the skull of the court clown and the other a monologue about to be or not to be.
To be or not to be? That is the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep no more, and by a sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. To die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause.
In these dialogues, Hamlet is clearly confused about living as a hero or dying so he could escape. Shakespeare's greatest point in this play is not revenge. It is thinking about life and death. On the other hand, after taking the skull of the court clown, Hamlet noticed its stench and rot, that the skull no longer bore any resemblance to the person he once knew and loved. It disappoints him deeply, and gives him a view similar to the emptiness and nothingness of life and death. Because he sees no difference between the rotten skull of the clown and the living body of his uncle. For him, there is no difference between life and death, so the question is between being or not being. Because does it even matter at that point? This also applies to Kai. The fact that Kai is in a tub of water, which has a color and state other than water, and is completely immersed in it, indicates his confusion. The property of water is to purify things, but to remain indifferent in water, which is not even a clear one, is itself a sign of Kai being imbued with a series of mistakes, making decisions from which he himself may regret. In another scene, Kai dances, a dance that, apart from its art and visual beauty, tells a story with every movement. The camera zooms in on a hologram that we think is Kai at first glance. But what we get with the analysis and investigations is an identity other than Kai, that is, ex-Kai. In previous music videos, including Obsession, we witnessed a confrontation and battle between EXO and X-Force. Unequal polarity, striving for one goal, destroying another. The worlds of these two groups are very different, yet they are both fighting for their lives. The stranger is actually ex-Kai to Kai. If you pay attention to the lyrics, this issue becomes clearer. I'm just like you. Although I pretend not to. We are all alike, alone, though we stared into each other's eyes, despite this short distance between us, I cannot reach you. In this song, Kai both identifies with Kai and rejects him and doesn't accept that they are just like each other, soldiers and warriors who move in a bigger game to maintain a goal that does not even belong to them. In fact, Hello Stranger is a tragic story about a controlled bead, whose ambition and thirst for power causes him to give up his morality and almost destroy the throne he wants to rule. The dance of Kai and Kai is quite similar, with the difference that we only see the face of Kai. It can be a symbol that Kai only imitates Kai, because his mimicry is limited, but Kai has completely abandoned his feelings to display in audiences' eyes. Kai is so overwhelmed by the feeling of extreme loneliness, and alienates himself from the world around him, that as a result of his latest struggles to find a sympathizer, his shadow is now alive, and dancing with him. Just like how we read in The Blind Owl, will anyone ever penetrate the secret of this disease, which transcends ordinary experience, this reverberation of the shadow of the mind, which manifests itself in a state of coma like that between death and resurrection, when one is neither asleep nor awake. If I have now made up my mind to write, it is only in order to reveal myself to my shadow, that shadow which at this moment is stretched across the wall in the attitude of one devouring with insatiable appetite each word I write. Ever since I broke the last ties, which held me to the rest of mankind, my one desire has been to attain a better knowledge of myself. Do not the rest of mankind who look like me, who appear to have the same needs and the same passions as I, exist only in order to cheat me? Are they not a mere handful of shadows, which have come into existence, only that they may mock and cheat me? Is not everything that I feel, see and think, something entirely imaginary, something utterly different from reality? I am writing only for my shadow, which is now stretched across the wall in the light of the lamp. I must make myself known to him. This faceless shadow is just a kind of hallucination or visual illusion of Kai. That's why we see it in some scenes, and it is not present in other scenes. In general, in this film, we see Kai either completely alone or with those who lack the normal image of human beings and were created only in the lonely world of Kai. First Kai looks at his right and left hands, as if he had just been revived like a puppet. He has taken his heart out of his chest, to make sure that he is alive. His heart is divided into two halves, one in darkness, and the other in light. Now his vision and thought is divided into two halves, being at a crossroads, whether to destroy, or be destroyed. Kai, like Kai, is hesitant about whether or not he will seize power through violence. For this purpose, Kai puts his hands on his head, and as if separating it, puts one on his heart, and the other on his brain. In the end, Kai tries to move forward, but his hand stops him. He tries to reach the top, but falls. In the end, he looks at Kai who has fallen like him. But he is the only one who sees him. In this dance, isn't Kai like the master puppeteer, playing Kai with his movements? As the curtain opens, the puppeteer must make the same movements behind the black curtain, to move around the puppet. The audience may not see him, but if one day a puppet looks up, we'll see the threads and we'll see how it is being controlled. This teaser is actually a show about blindness. Blindness to the motives of others, blindness to one's true nature, blindness to the emptiness of power. Kai's only wish is to destroy everything that has deprived him of the peace. Kai exposes the limitations of logic and rules emptiness as the dominant force in the world. The characters in this teaser are constantly trying to prove inexistence, or make ridiculously logical assumptions. But the world is absurd and disobeys logic. The balance between distance and confusion seems to have originated long ago in Kai's case. Kai and Kai maintain their cosmic distance, until a real problem occurs, or when they encounter their logic, which of us will survive? Kai accepts emptiness from the beginning, and this makes him understand better his empty existence, even if it never reaches a logical solution. How do we know we really exist? This is the question Kai asks the audience in the second teaser, Reason. An unimaginable thought, philosopher Richard Swinburne says, without the spirit, there is no self. The endless question we are still waiting for a definitive answer to is, do we really exist? Sure, you think you exist. But where exactly are we? Those who believe all that exists is physical, and those who claim that the mind and body are in different realms of existence. For personal identity, physicists say you must be in your brain or other bodily elements, while mystics believe that something else floats beyond our bodies. Mind, force or spirit. If the self is located in the body, where exactly can we find it? What if we strengthen some part of our brain with technology? So do we no longer exist? After entering a fancy restaurant, Kai goes to a table where no one around the table notices him. The man's disregard for Kai is not just because he does not exist, but because he will never see things he doesn't believe in. Like an immaterial ghost, Kai follows the man and the listener, with a look of ridicule. Kai's look may seem ridiculous, but it is in disbelief. The man is constantly talking about something that might be very interesting to him, and everyone around the table is staring at him. But then why we do not hear any of his words? While even the noise and the contact of spoons and forks with plates can be heard. Not a single word leaves his mouth, not even the cavity of his mouth forms a word. Because there is nothing to be said. Kai's look also indicates how many breaths should be lost, how many sounds of the song, in order for a sentence to be uttered, so that the only reason for its existence is that it must be said at some point. Many things can be said, but are they worth of hearing? Of course, this is not the first time that Kai has been captured in this disregard. In Lotto music video he has been ignored almost the whole game of Gamble. In the book, The Physics of the Impossible by Michio Kaku, we read about teleportation is also part of every magician's bag of tricks and illusions, pulling rabbits out of a hat, cards out of his or her sleeves, and coins from behind someone's ear. One of the more ambitious magic tricks of recent times featured an elephant disappearing before the eyes of a startled audience. In this demonstration, a huge elephant, weighing many tons, was placed inside a cage. Then, with a flick of a magician's wand, the elephant vanished, much to the amazement of the audience. Of course, the elephant really did not disappear. The trick was performed with mirrors. Long, thin, vertical mirror strips were placed behind each bar of the cage. Like a gate, each of these vertical mirror strips could be made to swivel. At the start of the magic trick, when all these vertical mirror strips were aligned behind the bars, the mirrors could not be seen and the elephant was visible. But when the mirrors were rotated by 45 degrees to face the audience, the elephant disappeared, and the audience was left staring at the reflected image from the side of the cage. Kai uses this magic trick as an irony, that whatever we do not see, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. The teaser has made the question of what is human more complicated than it ever was. In these scenes we see the existence of Kai, but there is no Kai for others. Even others do not exist for him. For him the only thing that can be seen is his reflection in a mirror. And again, a hidden identity. The sumptuous restaurant actually represents the world in which we live. Each of us belongs to a corner of life. Each table is completely stranger to the other and denies it. but on a larger scale they completely ignore the world outside of the restaurant. Now let aside that, they don't see Kai at all. The reason of being in a restaurant is summarized due to creatures' endless eating from life. We feed on life indifferently to the factors around us that make up the reason, and the end of this feed is death. So isn't the reason for this craving nothing but the absurdity of life itself? The point is that just as a baby doesn't know it is born, we are not aware of our own death, because we still don't know if we exist or not. This is where Kai enters the show. He is both outside the universe and in the center. He sees and is not seen, but still continues to dance or live in allegory. Sometimes in front of the blinds of life, and sometimes in the invisible mirrors of the universe. He doesn't care about being or not being, so he has a mask on his face that later on removes. Because it doesn't matter to hide the identity from those who do not see him. That is why, regardless of his personal existence, he alone creates an entity that's neither physical nor spiritual. This is the reason for identity, as well as why Kai has the power to teleport. And the interesting matter is, in the end of the teaser. That is, when we look at the restaurant from Kai's point of view. While the noise is still heard, the restaurant is completely closed and no one is there. A magician suddenly pulls a rabbit out of a hat which has just been shown to them empty. In the case of the rabbit, we know the magician has tricked us. What we would like to know is just how he did it. But when it comes to the world, it's somewhat different. We know that the world is not all sleight of hand and deception because here we are in it, we are part of it. Actually, we are the white rabbit, being pulled out of the hat. The only difference between us and the white rabbit is that the rabbit does not realize it is taking part in a magic trick. Unlike us, we feel we are part of something mysterious and we would like to know how it all works. The most important point to consider in this teaser is the loneliness of Kai, who is surrounded by darkness yet the lights only shine on him. One of the reasons Kai chose this location is to show the forgettable reminiscence about the train allegory of forgetting memories. The railway is interpreted as an original impersonal cosmic image. Rules and rhythms impose their inflexibility and ruthlessness on minor self-governing psychological content, including me, ego and complexities. This is reminiscent of a world that's imposed with all its unchanging power. The train is the image of destiny that takes us. The train is a reminder of an evolutionary device that we can ride with all difficulties, whether it's in the right or wrong direction. The train is a sign of psychological evolution. And it is a flip to consciousness, which leads us to a new life. Here we see how narrow and shallow the personality and dimensions of Kai's identity are. The scattered nature of his thoughts is likened to train tracks that have no end and no beginning, and he now stands in the center to look around and make the final decision. That means selecting the last destination. Kai has a hidden melodrama story in its simplest setting, but brilliantly complicates the structure of it by skillfully manipulating scenes, characters, and locations. He also creates a world with two distinct symbolic arrangements, the past life and the future life. In the former world, Kai is a cold and careless passerby. He travels between realms and times and is looking for only one thing. But when Kai enters the afterlife, he begins to question the identity of hero self, until he turns it into a terrible destructive force. The former refers to the pre-Exodus world, and the latter to the post-Exodus period. Kai is the initiator of the story. So he is able to play all the main characters in a way that changes destiny as he has seen before. For example, in Mmmh music video, it's Kai that brings all members together. These characters share information with him that he will later use to change the events in the future, such as when he returns in Sing For You music video and prevents the members from collapsing. He also in the VCR of Elysian concerts, is wandering in the white corridors with closed doors and destroying the artificial worlds of the members. The template space on the music video is the main example of alienation from oneself, society and nature. Emotions are worn out and often absent. In this music video, if we take out the sections of solo dance and group dance, the video is divided into 5 sections, which I will talk about. Considering the contrast of the scenes that will occur, we can conclude that following the music video of Obsession from EXO, we witnessed the battle of EXO members against the X-Force. In this music video, in addition to Kai, we also see X-Kai. In the initial scene, the camera zooms out from the back shot. First we face Kai angle. Kai himself is then added to the audience point of view and becomes part of the mezzanine. The bars that form the vertex of the triangle put Kai at the top of the pyramid once again. Like Exordium VCR, where Kai was standing on the Sphinx and staring at the horizon. Another element that can be said to be emphatic is the dress that Kai is wearing in this frame. The red and white royal robe is a garment worn by emperors, kings, or queens as a symbol of authority. Since this robe was generally worn during the coronation or coming to power ceremony, it is referred to as the coronation robe. The reason why Kai wears such robe is in the allegory of Macbeth gaining power of the crown, even though Macbeth was at the height of his reign, but he was aware of how this kingdom would fall in the future. That is why Lady Macbeth was so happy for this coronation. Yet on the contrary, Macbeth always looked terrified. This is the state that Kai is in at the beginning of this scene. One of the director's illustrations that impressed me the most is the proper use of changing the scene in a beautiful way. If you pay attention to the embroidered piece that Kai wears, it's matching the lighting of the buildings that was in front of Kai in the previous scene. Also, this chain headwear is very similar to the helmets of 8th century knights. One of the most important locations is the column area. There is a general reason for the column and it's to hold the roof, but in this scene there is no roof, but the sky is darker than it can belong to the night sky. It is more like a sky with neither the sun nor the moon. At first glance, it may seem that large and small rocks are floating in space due to the lack of gravity, but given the mysterious objects that can be seen in the sky, and of course given the fact that X-Kai is walking easily, in fact it seems that the time has slowed down. So X-Kai is not walking, but is teleporting to see the deadly catastrophe. Because in the previous scene, X-Kai is in the same place, but it still has rooftop, and there is no trace of circular spaceships. The reason why in some scenes we see Kai in a golden light is because the director has shown the teleportation artistically. Because in order to teleport, its constituent atoms must first be separated at the speed of light, and reunited at the same specified time at the same speed. So these scenes are just for the beauty of the work. Another important point is the dance, which is not devoid of meaning. For example, in this scene Kai movements are either stopped or controlled by other dancers. However, in the second scene after the rotation, the dancers are no more there. And it is Kai who has an inner conflict with himself, because he is unable to accept the truth. He sees other things as an excuse to move or stand still. X-Kai is mourning in these scenes in a way that could be the result of a battle. After seeing the consequences of the battle, he teleported in time and returned to the place where the great battle was taking place. But where exactly is the war taking place? The first thing that comes to the audience's mind may be the future or another planet, but given the different compositions, we are watching inside a mechanized world and mechanistic mind. It is the gears and the 01s that make up this world, the Matrix world. So we can say that either we are watching inside the disturbed mind of X-Kai, or ourselves in the mind of the Matrix mechanism. The Latin word matrix means mother or womb. The Matrix world is where everything that exists and does not exist is located. For this reason, it can be said that there is a superbrain that outside of it, there is nothingness, which is itself inside a world called the world of vortex, or the world of the subconscious. This is not the first time Kai has referred to the world of Matrix and the vortex. In One Monster and Infinity music video by Super M, he was again in a Matrix. This is a picture of the same mini-album, of Kai, which is located in the center of a vortex. Now this scene in the music video of Super M, Kai stands in the form of a vortex, so then, the matrix layer that is placed on top of him, is crushed and collapses. There is even a sentence about breaking the matrix in some part of the lyrics. In these scenes, Kai has used the West style. According to symbolism, West is the place where the sun sets and is sometimes used in art for a place where it has lost its light, which is one of the reasons for the Western style. If we pay attention to the atmosphere, it has drowned in deep colors of sunset, even though the sun is seen in the sky. X-Kai seems sad in all these scenes, even though he has gone back in time, but he does nothing to stop this collapse, because he knows in the depths of his heart, that nothing was caused by him. But isn't the dominant atmosphere in these images familiar? Yes, this is the world of X-forces that we saw in the music video of Monster Infinity from Super M. So far, we have seen most of what happened to the members of EXO. And we witnessed their battle with the X-Force. But this time, we are seeing the world of X and their perspective. If I want to give a simpler example, I can refer to the anime named Attack on Titan. In the first 3 seasons, we saw what was happening inside the wall and the ruthless enemies attacking the wall.
I love you! You hear me? Stay alive!
But in season 4, we go to the world outside the wall and across the sea, and this time the director gives a corner of people's lives that we thought of as enemies. And this is exactly the point where spreading antagonists and protagonists is no longer an easy task. And the main concern is basically who is the hero.
いろんな奴らって何？悪い奴らでしょ。
そうだよガビ。島にいるのは世界を地獄にした悪魔だ。
The battle is taking place. The X-forces prepare for this battle. And X-Kai goes even further, trying to negotiate and save the city and its allies by climbing the building that Kai once stood on. In art, dark water has many deep meanings, one of which is the loss of oneself. Joining the flow of dark water means that Kai has accepted his destiny and does not intend to fight. But the black water in which Kai is sleeping has no flow and has stopped in a frame without escape. An allegory of the fact that Kai has no way forward and no way back, even in time going forward or backward. There are some events that can never be stopped. Inside the main spaceship, there is a processor that is set in the shape of a vortex. The off computers represent people that are not aware they are in a matrix. This is the same example that was given earlier about the rabbit in the hat. Max Tegmark, Swedish-American cosmologist and professor at MIT, Massachusetts, states, imagine you are a character in Minecraft or a more advanced character in the computer game, a game that its graphics are really good, so that you do not feel like you are really in a game. You feel that you can really hit objects and you can fall in love, and enjoy the things around you, and when you start studying the physical world in this video game, you will finally discover that everything is made up of pixels. And everything that you thought was an object is actually only described by a set of numbers. And what about the top of the vortex? Above the vortex is an eye that gazes at this world that is constantly revolving around itself. This eye belongs to Kai himself, but Kai, who stands in nothingness, is aware of all events. Circular matrix buildings are like cycles that lose their importance, so their existence is no longer important or needed to Kai. Kai no longer sits like a gargoyle, but this time stands and stares into the scattered ashes of the turbulent and sad world of the mind. And for the first time the color of the sky has changed from sunset to dusk. Even in dance, there are changes in Kai's vision. The dancers who controlled him once are now controlled by him. And Kai is worshipped as a deity in this mental world by other dancers. In the end, Kai stands at the highest place of the mezzanine, and this time he seems to have made his decision. Like Macbeth, he will wear the crown, although he knows the fate, but will once again teleport in time, but this time not for stopping the war, but to join it. And this is the destiny that we will finally see, a frame of the same building where Kai was standing in the music video, that collapsed in the music video of Super M. This teaser is heavily influenced by Shakespeare Macbeth, and both follow the same concept. This annoying ending, with a nihilistic flavor, is just one of the elements that make this teaser one of the richest and the most complex K-pop music video tragedies. More than any other event, Kai manages to show the relationship between the minor world and the major world in a music video. A small world is when the focus is only on a few characters, but a larger world is when we reach the minds of people other than members of EXO. Of course, keep in mind that the absurdity of this teaser is not to show the emptiness of life, because philosophers like Nietzsche did not consider absurdity to mean the worthlessness of values. Rather, it was meant to devalue values. The atmosphere of this design has completely contributed to the duality of human nature, of human life and death, because the sunset is the only point where day and night meet, and the moon and the sun shine in the sky at the same time, one because of burning in its own fire, and another for the light that does not belong to itself. Kai recounts the adventures of a savior, who seems to be unlucky, and forced to wander in time. These faint allegories are reminiscent of Macbeth's fate, a fate that according to a prophecy, his climax causes him to fall. The higher he got, the deadlier the fall became. The woman in the mirror is a symbol of death. Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, yin and yang, moon and sun, night and day, just as a human being was created. Two essences within an entity. One is death and the other one is life. Kai, who is dancing with a bright white cloth that's being dirtied by the dust, is a symbol of crises. The characters are not completely apparent to us and it's difficult to determine what the main story is. Because mirrors do not reflect anything, but are actually a gateway to other worlds. In the film, Orpheus by the French artist Jean Cocteau, we're dealing with mirror-like gates, a journey through mirrors, and the character of death that's adapted to the reflection in the mirror in this teaser. In Cocteau, Orpheus' character worships death, so poetically that he forgets life, and on the other hand, death loves him so much that it wants him to live.
Ces gestes, levez-vous. Vous savez qui je suis?
Je le sais, ma mort.
Being controlled by reflection refers to the same concept. Kai has to choose life over death. This is not the first time that Kai's movements have been clearly controlled. In fact, in Sing For You music video, he was being controlled by Chan Yeol and So, fighting movements. The reason for these controls is due to the influence of Kai decisions in the storyline, which will change the final destiny. It is clear that these journeys between worlds speak of themes and values that are different from what we have seen so far in EXO. Among all the mirrors that make a way to the light, one is completely dark, just like the black Rubik in EXO. Kai is drawn into this dark world, and wears a red cloth. After all the travels, he now bears a bloody history. Behind him is the eclipse of the sun. The symbol of this scene is the sun that illuminates our whole world. When the moon, another reflection of light, is in front of it, will make our world pitch black. Any light can be turned into darkness if you simply cover it with your eyelids. When the cameras zoom out, Kai, who was in the form of the sun in the previous teaser, is now in the form of the moon after the eclipse, and the light that shines on him is actually the artificial light that the moon reflects. Now Kai is dancing on the moon. The surrounding lights shine beautifully in the form of the stars around him, doubling the beauty of Kai's dance. Before confronting Kai, Kai regrets and almost give up his goal. But a sense of loyalty to his purpose drives him to do so. However, after a confrontation, his powerful character begins to disintegrate, leaving Kai more and more alone. His feelings constantly fluctuate between being a merciless savior or a merciful defeated. These fluctuations indicate a sad tension inside him. His thinking is too ambitious to let his conscience deter him from destroying Kai, and he is too conscientious to be satisfied with himself as a hero. At the end of the film, as he stands in the center of the glowing lights, he seems almost abandoned. Despite all the recent events, he can finally come back to life as a warrior when his enemies besiege him from behind the lights. He shows a dashing performance as if no one can pull him down. This is partly due to his confidence in seeing the future through teleportation, yet Kai thinks of the battle between EXO and the X-Force as nothing but futile. Unlike many other heroes, Kai's fate is a sad one, because he does not know that the future he sees due to teleportation no longer belongs to his world after his return. Because according to the law of physics, he is constantly changing futures and creating countless parallel worlds. Countless hands clinging to an uncertain future to save themselves from drowning. All teasers are related at one point. A room immersed in endless richness but is stranger to its identity, circular windows facing the sunset but without any gleam of light. A restaurant of banquets of small and stereotypical lives. A journey to find true essence but without a future and a past, because we see Kai's past and future, but we never saw Kai past, and despite that we call him an enemy and his destruction will leave him with no future. When the dawn and the blackness go to Crimson Peak, hero of the tragedy is dead. He is no longer the hero but the tragedy itself. Ride or die, in fact, means that despite of all the regrets that are on the way, the battle must be won, because other than this is death. One of the two forces must die in order for the other to survive. For this reason, in the first teaser, we see a holographic image of the last teaser, but there are differences in this hologram towards the end of this scene, and this is because the future we travel to is not the same as we had in the past, and constantly will change. And countless worlds will be created with countless possibilities. The end of the Kai film is very similar to Orpheus. In the end, Orpheus dies and goes to the world of death, but in this world, he is meted by another death, and after his second death, another life is waited for him. but he remember nothing, just like a newborn child. The final scene we see an empty stage. That's an allusion to the endless cycle, which is repeated over and over, without remembering it. That's why in the first teaser, there was a hologram of the last teaser, because there is no past and no future for Kai, and for this reason the teasers have no special order, as if they are mixed up.